My name is Alexis. I'm 31 years old and I'm about to tell you a story about what happens when the family that threw you away discovers you've become everything they never believed you could be. It started with a text message. After 4 years of complete silence, my mother's name appeared on my phone's screen like a ghost from a life I'd tried to forget. Family emergency. Need you home this weekend. Uncle Robert is visiting and wants to see everyone together. Be there Saturday 2 p.m. Don't disappoint us. I stared at that message for 20 minutes, sitting in my corner office on the 42nd floor of the Chrysler Building, watching the city sprawl beneath me like a kingdom I'd conquered one painful step at a time. Uncle Robert. I barely remembered him. Some distant relative who sent generic birthday cards when I was a kid. The last time I'd seen my family was at my college graduation, where they'd clapped politely as I walked across the stage with my summa cum laude honors, then spent the entire dinner afterward talking about my brother Tyler's new job at a local insurance company. But let me back up. Let me tell you how a girl who was treated like an inconvenience became someone her family suddenly needed to impress. Chapter 1. The Unwanted. I was born third in a family that had already decided 2 children were enough. My parents, David and Linda Carver, had my older brother Tyler when they were young and optimistic about parenthood. 2 years later came my sister Brooke, their precious princess who could do no wrong. By the time I arrived they were tired. Financially stretched. Emotionally tapped out. You know how some families have that youngest child who gets spoiled because they're the baby? That wasn't me. I got the scraps of everything, hand-me-down clothes that never quite fit, Tyler's old textbooks with his notes scribbled in the margins, Brooke's outgrown backpacks with broken zippers that my parents promised to fix but never did. When Tyler made the varsity basketball team, the whole house celebrated. Dad took time off work to attend every game. Mom bought a professional camera to document his athletic journey. When Brooke got cast in the high school musical, they rearranged their entire social calendar around her rehearsal schedule and invited the extended family to opening night. Me. I won the regional debate championship when I was 16. You know what my parents said? That's nice, honey. Can you help Tyler with his college application essays? He's really struggling with the writing portion. By junior year I'd figured out the game. Nobody was going to invest in me, so I'd better start investing in myself. I got a job at a local bookstore shelving inventory and running the register for $8 an hour. The first thing I bought with my own money was a laptop. Not some top-of-the-line gaming computer like Tyler had gotten for his birthday, just a refurbished model that could handle my schoolwork without crashing every 20 minutes. My parents were thrilled that I was working. Look at Alexis being so responsible, they'd tell people. She's always been so independent. What they meant was, look, we don't have to worry about her anymore. When it came time for college applications, I knew what was coming. Tyler had gotten his tuition paid in full, state school, but still. Brooke was a year older than me, and when her acceptance letter came, Dad was already talking about opening a second college savings account. When I sat down with my parents to discuss my plans, they delivered the news I'd been expecting since I was old enough to understand family dynamics. Alexis, sweetheart, Mom began, using that gentle voice people use when they're about to destroy your dreams. We need to be honest with you. We've already put 2 kids through college, and with the economy the way it is, we just don't have the money to do it again, Dad finished. But you're so smart and capable. I'm sure you'll figure something out. I'd been saving every penny from the bookstore because I'd seen this conversation coming from miles away. But it still felt like a punch to the stomach, especially delivered with that fake sympathy, like they were breaking tragic news instead of making a deliberate choice. So I worked my ass off. I applied for every scholarship I could find, wrote essays until my fingers cramped, and somehow managed to piece together enough financial aid to cover 70% of my tuition at the state university. The remaining 30% plus room and board plus books, I'd figure it out. That's when I swallowed my pride and called my grandmother on my father's side. Nana Rose had always been different from my parents. She'd built a successful catering business from nothing and lived in a beautiful house across town. She'd never played favorites the way my parents did. Nana, I said when she answered, I need to ask you for help with something and I'll understand if you say no. I explained everything. The partial scholarship, the remaining costs, my parents' refusal to help. I promised to pay her back as soon as I could, with interest. There was a long pause. Then, Alexis, honey, I've watched your parents overlook you your entire life. Of course I'll help you. And don't you dare talk about paying me back right now. Focus on your education. I started crying right there on the phone. Finally, someone in my family believed in me. But even that moment got poisoned. I ran downstairs to tell my parents I'd solved the college funding problem, and found them in the living room with Tyler and Brooke celebrating. Sitting in the driveway was a brand new Jeep Wrangler with a giant red bow on top. "Congratulations, son," Dad was saying to Tyler. "You've earned this." Tyler was grinning like he'd won the lottery, taking selfies with his graduation gift. And I'm standing there thinking about how I just spent 3 months agonizing over textbook costs. I had what was probably a really stupid idea, but I was 18 and feeling bold. "Hey Tyler," I said, "since you have a new car now, could I maybe buy your old Honda? I could really use it for getting to campus." The look Tyler gave me was like I'd asked him to donate his organs. "Are you kidding? I'm selling that car to help pay for my apartment deposit. Why would I just give it to you for cheap? Because I'm your sister and I helped you pass chemistry for 2 years straight?" He actually laughed. "Alexis, you can take the campus shuttle like every other college student. It's good for you to rough it a little." My parents nodded along like this was perfectly reasonable wisdom. "He's right, honey," Mom said. "Public transportation builds character." That night, I lay in bed thinking about how my parents had just dropped $25,000 on a car for Tyler, but taking the bus would build character for me. I was done expecting anything from them. Chapter 2: Building an Empire. College was exactly what I expected, me grinding it out while everyone else had family safety nets. I lived in the cheapest dorm available and worked 3 part-time jobs: tutoring math, manning the campus bookstore, and freelance writing for local businesses. While my classmates were pledging sororities and going to football games, I was building a portfolio and networking with professors who saw potential in me. I studied finance and business management, but I also took every computer science elective I could fit into my schedule. I had a feeling technology was going to change everything and I wanted to be ready. Dr. Martinez, my macroeconomics professor, became an unexpected mentor. She'd built her own consulting firm before transitioning to academia, and she saw something in me that reminded her of herself. "You have good instincts, Alexis," she told me after I'd aced her notoriously difficult senior seminar. "Have you thought about starting your own business instead of working for someone else?" The idea had been percolating in the back of my mind for months. I'd noticed that small businesses in our college town were struggling with basic digital marketing. They had no web presence, no social media strategy, no way to compete with larger companies that could afford professional marketing teams. With Dr. Martinez's guidance and a $2,000 loan from Nana Rose, I started Catalyst Digital Solutions out of my dorm room. My first client was the bookstore where I worked. I redesigned their website and created a social media campaign that increased their online sales by 40% in 3 months. Word spread quickly in a small college town. By graduation, I had 12 regular clients and was making more money than most of my classmates' starting salaries. Meanwhile, family dynamics remained exactly the same. Tyler had graduated with a business degree and was working at a mid-level insurance company, still living at home to save money. Brooke had switched majors 3 times and was finally graduating with a communications degree and no clear career plan. When I walked across the stage at graduation, my parents attended but spent the entire ceremony whispering about Tyler's latest promotion and Brooke's new boyfriend. At dinner afterward, they barely acknowledged my magna cum laude honors. "That's wonderful, dear," Mom said absently when I mentioned my academic achievements. "Tyler, tell us more about this management training program." 2 weeks after graduation, I moved to Austin, Texas, where the tech scene was exploding and small businesses needed exactly what I was offering. I found a 1-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood and set up my home office in the corner of the living room. Within 6 months, I'd doubled my client base. Within a year, I'd hired my first employee. Within 2 years, I was running a legitimate digital marketing agency with 8 full-time employees and monthly revenues that would have shocked my parents. But they never asked about my work. They never called to check how I was doing. Family updates came through Nana Rose, who was bursting with pride about my success even if my parents weren't interested. Tyler got married to his college girlfriend in a big ceremony that my parents paid for. I wasn't invited to the wedding. Apparently there wasn't enough space for extended family, though somehow they'd managed to invite Dad's golf buddies and Mom's book club. Brooke moved in with her boyfriend and got a job at a local nonprofit making barely above minimum wage. My parents helped with her rent and constantly bragged about how she was following her passion, and making a difference in the world. I kept building my business, kept growing my client base, kept proving to myself that I didn't need their validation. By the time I turned 28, Catalyst Digital had offices in 3 cities and was generating 7 figures in annual revenue. I'd bought a house in Austin's trendy South Lamar district and was driving a Tesla Model S that I'd paid for in cash. I'd also met Jason, a software engineer who actually appreciated my ambition instead of being intimidated by it. He understood the drive to build something from nothing because he'd started his own app development company straight out of college. "You're incredible," he told me one evening as we sat on my back patio, watching the sunset over the Austin skyline. "The way you've built all this from scratch. I don't think your family realizes what they're missing." "Their loss," I said, and I meant it. I'd stopped waiting for their approval years ago. Then came that text message. After 4 years of silence, they suddenly needed me for a family gathering. Chapter 3, The Reckoning. I stared at my mother's text for 20 minutes, feeling a mixture of rage and curiosity. The nerve of these people. 4 years without a phone call, and now they were issuing orders like I was still their overlooked teenager. My first instinct was to delete the message and continue living my life. But then I started thinking about how much had changed since the last time they'd seen me. I was successful in ways they couldn't even imagine. I was building an empire while Tyler was still processing insurance claims and Brooke was organizing charity drives. Suddenly I wanted to go. Not because I missed them or wanted to reconnect, but because I wanted to see their faces when they realized what I'd become without their help or support. I decided to drive back to my hometown in my Tesla, but I wouldn't tell them I was coming in that car. I'd park it at the hotel where I was staying and take an Uber to the house. I wanted to control the narrative, control the reveals. Saturday afternoon arrived faster than I expected. I'd spent way too much time choosing what to wear. I wanted to look successful but not obviously expensive. I settled on a tailored blazer and dark jeans, paired with understated jewelry that was actually worth more than most people's cars. The Uber dropped me off in front of my childhood home and suddenly I was 18 again, standing on that porch feeling invisible and unwanted. I could see Tyler's old Honda in the driveway. Apparently he'd never upgraded, along with Brooke's beat-up Subaru and what I assumed was Uncle Robert's rental car. I knocked instead of using the doorbell like a visitor rather than family. Dad opened the door and for a split second, I saw genuine shock cross his face. Then the performative smile kicked in. "Alexis, you made it. Come in, come in. Everyone's so excited to see you." Sure they were. The living room was crowded. Uncle Robert was exactly as I remembered. A thin, elderly man with sharp eyes who'd made his fortune in real estate back when California property was affordable. Tyler was there with his wife, Jessica, who I'd met exactly once at their wedding that I wasn't invited to. Brooke had brought her boyfriend, Marcus, and they were all sitting around like this was a normal family gathering instead of the first time we'd been in the same room in 4 years. "Look who finally decided to grace us with her presence," Tyler said with a smirk. "How was the bus ride home?" Even now he couldn't resist that old joke. I just smiled. "Everyone, you remember Alexis," Mom announced like I was a distant cousin instead of her daughter. Uncle Robert studied me with interest. "My goodness, Alexis. Last time I saw you, you were just graduating college. What have you been up to?" Before I could answer, Mom launched into her usual performance. "Oh, Robert, we're so proud of all our children. Tyler's been promoted twice at his insurance company. He's in management now. And Brooke is doing such important work at the homeless shelter. They're both doing so well for themselves." She'd managed to summarize my siblings' lives without mentioning me at all, even though Uncle Robert had specifically asked about me. Dinner was exactly what I expected. Mom had made her famous pot roast, and everyone crowded around the dining room table like old times, except I was squeezed between Tyler and Brooke at the far end while Uncle Robert got the seat of honor next to my parents. The conversation immediately turned to Tyler's work achievements and Brooke's passion projects. Nobody asked about my life, my work, or what I'd been doing for the past 4 years. Then the subtle mockery started. "Alexis, I love your blazer," Brooke said sweetly. "Very minimalist. I guess that's the trend now, right? Less is more." She was trying to call my outfit cheap, but the joke was on her. This minimalist blazer cost more than she made in 2 months. "Thank you," I said simply. Tyler couldn't resist jumping in. "Hey Alexis, how did you get here today? Please don't tell me you're still taking public transportation everywhere." The whole table laughed, including my parents. Even after 4 years, they were still making the same tired jokes about me not having a car in college. I just kept eating my pot roast and smiling. Finally, Uncle Robert turned to me with genuine curiosity. Alexis, I notice everyone's been talking about Tyler and Brooke, but no one's mentioned what you've been up to. What kind of work are you doing these days? The table went quiet. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting for me to admit that I was struggling, that I'd never amounted to much, that their low expectations had been justified all along. I run a digital marketing agency, I said casually. Catalyst Digital Solutions. We have offices in Austin, Dallas, and Houston. The silence that followed was beautiful. I watched my father's face as he processed what I'd just said. Mom's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Tyler and Brooke looked confused, like they weren't sure if this was impressive or if they should still be making fun of me. A marketing agency, Uncle Robert repeated, clearly impressed. That's quite an accomplishment in today's market. You must be doing very well for yourself. I do all right, I said modestly. The rest of dinner was awkward as hell. My siblings didn't know how to continue their little game of mocking me, and my parents kept shooting each other confused looks. Uncle Robert kept asking me questions about my business, and I could tell he was genuinely interested in my success. After dinner, I helped clear the table just like old times, but the dynamic had completely shifted. Nobody was treating me like the family failure anymore. They were all watching me, trying to figure out what had changed. Well, this has been lovely, I said, checking my phone, but I should probably head back to my hotel. Early flight tomorrow. Hotel? Mom asked. You're not staying here? I figured it would be more comfortable for everyone this way. Uncle Robert stood up to give me a hug. It was wonderful seeing you again, Alexis. You should be very proud of what you've accomplished. My parents immediately jumped up. We'll walk you out, Dad said quickly. Get some fresh air. Of course they would. They wanted to maintain the happy family act until the very end, and they probably wanted to interrogate me about my business. The whole group followed me outside. Mom, Dad, Tyler and Jessica, Brooke and Marcus. They were all chatting and laughing, probably expecting to watch me walk down the street to wait for another Uber. Instead, I pulled out my phone and opened my car app. What are you doing? Tyler asked. Getting my car, I said. A minute later, my Tesla Model S pulled up to the curb. The sleek black sedan looked like something out of a movie compared to the aging Honda and beat-up Subaru parked in their driveway. The silence that fell over the group was absolutely perfect. I walked to the car, thanked the valet service, and slipped a $50 tip to the driver who delivered it from the hotel. Then I got in, started the engine and rolled down the window. My father was standing there with his mouth hanging open. Finally, he managed to stammer, That's a Tesla. The Model S, I confirmed. Plaid edition. Mom actually gasped. Tyler and Brooke were staring at the car like it was an alien spacecraft. Uncle Robert, I noticed, was smiling with what looked like pride. This must have cost. Dad started. More than my house, I finished. But not as much as my house in Austin. You should see that sometime. The looks on their faces when they realized I owned both a six-figure car and my own house were absolutely priceless. They all just stood there, pale and speechless. I rolled up the window and drove away, watching them in my rearview mirror. They were still standing there like statues, staring after me. Best Saturday I'd had in years. Chapter 4, The Aftermath. Sunday morning, I was lying by the pool at my boutique hotel when my phone started buzzing like crazy. First Mom, then Dad, then Tyler, then Brooke. Call after call after call. I ignored every single one and ordered another coffee. After my morning swim, I finally looked at my messages. 19 missed calls and 12 text messages, all from my family. The messages were hilarious. Suddenly, everyone was super polite and interested in reconnecting. Mom, Alexis, sweetheart, we should get together soon and catch up properly. I'd love to hear more about your business. Tyler, hey sis, it was great seeing you last night. We should definitely stay in touch. Maybe you could give me some business advice sometime. Brooke, Alexis, I've been thinking we should hang out more. Maybe you could show me around Austin sometime? I'd love to see your place. Even Dad texted, Alexis, your mother and I are very proud of you. We should have dinner again soon, just family. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I packed my bags, checked out of the hotel and drove back to Austin where I had a real life waiting for me. 2 weeks passed. The calls and texts kept coming, getting more desperate each time. Mom started leaving voicemails about how much they missed me and how they'd always known I was destined for great things. Tyler began asking about investment opportunities and whether I needed any help managing my finances. Brooke suggested we take a sister's trip to Europe, completely funded by me, of course. I deleted everything without responding. Then one Thursday evening I was leaving my downtown office when I saw two familiar figures standing next to my Tesla in the parking garage. My parents. Alexis, Mom called out when she saw me. "We've been waiting for you." I sighed. This was inevitable. "There's a coffee shop across the street. We can talk there." We walked to the little cafe in silence. I ordered my usual oat milk latte. They got basic black coffee, probably intimidated by the menu prices in downtown Austin. We sat at a corner table and I waited for them to start talking. "Alexis," Mom began, "we want you to know how proud we are of you. You were always so independent, so driven. We always knew you'd make something of yourself." I almost laughed out loud. The revisionist history was incredible. "We made some mistakes when you were younger," she continued. "We realize that now. But we want to make things right. We want you to be part of the family again." I sat there waiting for the real reason they'd driven 12 hours to Austin. "The thing is," Mom went on, "Tyler and Jessica want to buy a house, but the market is so expensive now. And Brooke's been talking about going back to school for her master's degree." There was. "Real estate prices have gotten out of control," Dad added. "And graduate school costs so much more than it used to." "What exactly are you asking me?" I said, even though I knew perfectly well where this was heading. "Well," Mom said carefully, "since you've been so successful financially, we thought maybe you could help them out. You know, as a way to reconnect with the family. Show that you're committed to being part of our lives again." I stared at them for a long moment. Then I started laughing. Really laughing. The kind that makes other cafe patrons turn and stare. "Let me get this straight," I said. "You want me to pay for Tyler's house and Brooke's graduate school so I can earn my way back into a family that ignored me for 4 years and never gave a damn about my success until they found out I had money?" My parents looked uncomfortable. "It's not like that, Alexis." "It's exactly like that," I said, standing up. "You know what the funniest part is? You keep saying you always knew I'd be successful. But if that were true, you would have supported me when I was growing up. You would have helped with my college costs like you did for Tyler and Brooke. You would have invited me to Tyler's wedding instead of claiming there wasn't enough space." Mom's eyes were getting watery. "We made mistakes, but we can fix this." "No," I said, picking up my purse. "We can't fix this. And I don't want to. I spent 22 years trying to earn love from people who were never going to give it to me. I'm done with that." I walked out of the cafe and left them sitting there. Epilogue. The life I built. That was 2 years ago. They tried calling a few more times, but eventually they gave up. I heard through Nana Rose that Tyler never did buy that house. Turns out he didn't qualify for the mortgage he thought he could get. Brooke never went back to school either. They're both still living the same small lives in the same small town with the same small dreams. Meanwhile, I sold Catalyst Digital Solutions to a Fortune 500 company for 8 figures. I used part of the proceeds to start a venture capital fund focused on supporting women entrepreneurs who remind me of myself. Brilliant, driven, overlooked by people who should have believed in them. Jason and I got married last spring in a beautiful ceremony in Tuscany. Nana Rose was there, beaming with pride as she walked me down the aisle. My parents weren't invited. I didn't miss them. Sometimes people ask if I ever regret cutting ties with my family. The answer is no. You can't miss something you never really had. I'm 31 years old. I live in a penthouse overlooking Lady Bird Lake. I run a fund that's already helped launch 12 successful companies. I'm married to someone who celebrates my ambition instead of tolerating it. And I'm surrounded by chosen family, people who see my worth and have never once made me earn their love. I don't need validation from people who treated me like spare parts until they realized I was worth something. My name is Alexis Chin. I built an empire from nothing. And I did it all without them.